Yeah, I'll just continue so that it's not taking up time. So what I was talking about was the fact of InsightMind, my business as a sole trader, is based around the concept of mind, body, spirit. I work with trauma-sensitive mindfulness, also creative courses in poetry and mindful poetry, and also around working with the body in mindful movement and walking. And also I do intuitive coaching as well on the spirit. So those are the three areas I work under. I'm currently, the reason why I set this business up was in one of my slides, which was because it was one way I could work in a more trauma sensitive way, as I said, to help with the stress, anxiety, and depression I saw around me in BAME communities, in the VI community, with my colleagues people I taught, service users, family and friends. And of course, after the pandemic, this has continued. So it's these kind of anxieties that I've seen around me. I work in a very intersectional way through my own lived experience as well. My unique selling point was that I wanted to set the business up to work with marginalized communities. So I have also a background of working in the VI community, and like I said, with lived experience of glaucoma and other things. Other areas I've noted and highlighted is of the disproportionality for BAME communities to suffer with sight loss. So I had another slide which was looking at the fact that my business is very evidence-based. So InsightMind is based on the fact that anyone who lives with any kind of stigma, so racism, discrimination, unemployment, social exclusion, or any kind of illness or disability can result in decline of mental health and lead to depression and other traumas. And I believe I'm looking at further research around collective trauma and how we hold memories in the body. And mindfulness is something that I'm again working on further training around why people of color in particular have been excluded from the mindfulness arena. So there's lots of different areas of research I'm working on, which we can talk about a bit further down. So at the moment, I've started giving classes to visually impaired people. That's through my contacts in the sight loss sector. So I've been, like I said earlier, I've developed my own courses in mindful poetry, in creativity, in mindfulness, and I'm developing these courses around trauma-based mindfulness. So some of the other data that I have that we can again talk about later, because it's a bit long, one of the longer slides I had. As a researcher, everything I've done is evidence-based, as I've said. So I gave the very non-statistical evidence around stigma, and people living with stigma will suffer from depression, but there's actual statistics and studies that have been done around VIP and depression. There's a particular study called the DEPVIT study. Which lose their suffer
I think, Beverley, I think you're breaking up, at least on my end. Not sure. Yeah, I think I should just drop to, while we're waiting for Beverley to reconnect. Michael, you're next on my screen. Shall we go to you for some introductions? You're on mute. You need to unmute, Michael.
Sorry, hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Michael Brown, and I haven't sent slides in because I wasn't around. I've been away for the weekend. But I run a social enterprise called Empower to Cook in Buckinghamshire. I set it up as a way of employment for myself. I trained as a chef, and then I lived abroad for 5 years and trained as a teacher, a lecturer at a college, where I taught for 14 years, and then I suffered depression all my life, so I couldn't find work for 3 years. So I set up a social enterprise on the back of my skills, really, to create my own employment. I'm married, I have 2 children, and basically use cookery workshops as a tool to improve people's lives through confidence, self-esteem, improved health, well-being. And that's it, really. I work with disadvantaged groups. I work with schools. I work with mental health clients. I work with homeless. I worked with carers, autistic adults, children through to adults, all sorts of people, including corporates. So we teach. We just use the cookery workshops, my skills as improving people's lives. But we're also tapping into food surplus, food waste. We've been recently funded by the Rothschild Foundation, and they're funding us to open a community kitchen in High Wycombe. So I'm just really using my skills, really. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Vic, do you want to do your introductions? And you should be able to slide share.
Okay, sure. Let me try share my slides. Great meeting Beverley and Michael. I might feel a bit inferior after their shares. I got a few slides together, but first of all, I'm lying down. This is what I normally look like in my wheelchair. I'm struggling with a really sore shoulder at the moment. So I'm a quadriplegic, paralyzed from the shoulders down since a long time now, almost 30 odd years. In 1987, I had an accident when I was 19 as a fine arts student at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. So at the moment, I'm under this. It's like a coffee table thing with panels where my laptop can sit on it. So Annika, I've got a picture of like a little stand, I think I've shown you before, that has panels where my laptop can go on top, and I lie underneath. I can't sit in my wheelchair all day. So when I lie down, I need to carry on working. It's easier for me to do that. This is a picture for the top view. So on top of the laptop, there's like a little silver dome there. That's a little camera. And I have on my glasses a little silver dot. And as I move my head, the cursor moves. And then to click the cursor is the tube I have in my mouth. It's not for oxygen or anything like that. It's actually a sip and puff switch. So instead of clicking, I puff like that, and that activates the left click, and to right click, I suck like that. So that's a kind of an image of what the camera looks like, someone sitting in front of a monitor. And so it detects the head movement and movement of face. And that's pretty much what I do. As Michael, so I live in Cape Town. I'm married to Emma. We have 2 kids. Other picture there is of me graduating with my PhD, which I got in 2016 in disability studies. Opportunity to have that. So I got mentioned for research and innovation. I would consider myself more of an educator than an entrepreneur in that sense, but I am involved with some exciting initiatives, which I hope to share. Myself lecturing, and I'm involved with an exciting social enterprise called Shonaquip Social Enterprise. Basically, also set up to meet a need of Shonaquip. Basically, there's 2 key things. It's a wheelchair manufacturer predominantly and assistive devices. So my motorized wheelchair was made by Shona, and they make other devices, but predominantly wheelchairs. And then seeing that there's such a lack of, if you think of the wheelchair as the product and my disability as a lifestyle, so to speak, with all aspects of employment, education, getting around in social circumstances, being able to access transport, etc., as part of the lifestyle. So the Shonaquip enterprise has an arm to it called the Uhamba Foundation, which is about addressing needs, doing workshops. It's fine giving someone a wheelchair, but how do we actually get them involved to participate in society? So it's a broader context than that. As part of the SSE, the Shonaquip Social Enterprise, I represent them on the Presidential Working Group on Disability in South Africa. So we're a group that's with Cyril Ramaphosa, taken about 3 years ago before lockdown was in South Africa. And we're a group of about 40 to 45 members representing disability around South Africa. So the key thing is to try and how do we break those barriers? How do we enact policy? Very difficult in our country. We have, South Africa is quite interesting employees. We have amazing access to technology and products, but almost like third world living conditions, circumstances. One of my key challenges, I don't have the answers to everything, that I'm trying to get done is to get disability included in higher education and in curricula. You might experience the same where across, it'd be interesting to see other feedback from members. I'll just end here, is that, in our policy, we advocate for meeting people with disabilities and how do we meet their needs and how do we include them. But we constantly, it's my huge bugbear, we constantly produce professionals from doctors, lawyers, architects, and especially economists and young entrepreneurs, the young business minds of our country that don't know how to include people with disabilities in the economy or in all areas of professional practice in general. So that's the key thing I'm trying to drive. My main passion is painting. I paint with my mouth. Somebody said I should end up with one or two of them. So I do like horses. So there's some of my painting. So that's me in a nutshell. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, Vic. And last but not least, Jean-Marie, can you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, everyone. It's afternoon already, it's still morning. My name is Jean-Marie Bazibu. I work for Hope and Health Vision. It is a nonprofit located in Congo, especially East and Burundi. So we started the organization with 2 other friends in 2011. We worked more with raped women, children who were in the military, and other people with mental disabilities. So I did enjoy the job a lot, but when we started to get war in Burundi and Congo, we got a lot of challenges from the government, like saying, oh, is this going to be political? I will give you an example so you can understand. For example, in the east of Congo, we have the Hutu from Rwanda, who came there and who lives there. We also have the Tutsi, and then we have the Congolese, they live there. So the Hutu, some of those Hutu raped some women, they got pregnant. And then the women, when they go back in the community with the mental health issues, the community doesn't like them. They will be saying like, no, this child has a blood from Rwanda. It is a child from someone who raped you. Definitely the child also will be like a sociopath or psychopath because you need to kill the child. So in Uvira, I saw that lady was like, what should I do with this child? Because at school, they're not gonna like the child. Myself, they don't like me. So that was the big issue, and the fight we have is still with the government to see how they can facilitate the job. And for now, I'm very thankful to Dr. Annika. We are doing another project with youth in school in Congo with mental health disabilities. And the project is going very well because the positive thing that we did find that we didn't expect is that some of the teachers we work with were like, no, let's include the local community leaders and the teachers and the religious leaders. So we invited them, we did a little party, we told them what we're gonna do. They were really happy at the point that it is a pilot project, but it's getting very big because we included all the community. The challenge we had also, because it was mental health, about mental health in Congo in East with people from rural area. It is very tough to talk about mental health to people in rural areas. Some will believe more into spirituality, will say that this is just wasting time, we need bread, we need food. Your mental health things is something you learn from white people, and the experimentation they did it to white people, it cannot work on African culture. So in order for our work to work, we need to include them in the motivation, and the hardest part is to convince them that science is the truth, even with COVID. So that's a good thing that I would like to suggest to people who invest in Africa will be to please listen to the participants or the local community, understand very well their needs, because most of the time we feel like the founders or people who gives money tell you what to do or what to expect without being on ground, without seeing the reality. So the point that now I'm in the US for now, but if you look at the reports, they said how much money we did spend on Ebola, millions, a lot of money spent by organization, international organization, and you ask where is the result is always not good. The results are not good. They spend too much money, but bad result because they don't take account of what the local population needs or what they really want. They will set you the expectation ahead without knowing the reality. So it will be really good for people to think about it. And the other thing to finish will be people to always look for Congo to support, especially people with mental disabilities, because I was born in an area where if you have schizophrenia, mental illness, I've seen some people, some family killing other people because of mental illness. In 2004, I've seen Rwanda, the government of Rwanda used to send all the people with mental illness in Congo. They will cross the border and come to us and they will die on the street. I remember one day, a friend of mine who is a priest, and he was like, "Oh, how was your Sunday?" I was like, "No, I just saw this guy who has schizophrenia. People just burned him alive." And the priest yelled at me, was like, "And you did like the other people, why you didn't call the police? Why you didn't do anything?" I was like, I was alone. Even if I could call the police still perceive it like a danger to the community to have mental illness. So it's really good if we help the government, the leaders to understand that it's a reality that people did not choose. Contrary wise, it is something that we can be genetic or something that the society did give to us or push us to get, like in case of Congo, the PTSD we have, it is because of the wars that we have. So, and then the good thing to finish, so it don't take too much time, is the main key really with people with disabilities is acceptance, insight, and awareness. When people accept themselves the way they are, and if by chance the society accept the way they are, they become more happier. So it's more to focus more on looking on knowing yourself, understanding yourself, and know that it's not your fault, even if sometimes the society doesn't understand it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Marie. And yeah, thanks to all four of you for introducing yourself and giving us a background to our audience. You can hear that we have for completely different settings and context and disabilities we're talking about. And as I said, I'm going to ask a couple of questions and then I'm going to give you the chance to also ask questions, because I think you're probably going to have many. So for my side, the first thing I'd like to know, and Michael, I'm going to start with you, is what was the one or multiple, what was sort of the biggest challenge or challenges that you experienced while entrepreneuring, while trying to implement the social innovation?
Crikey. Well, I just have an idea. So I left school with no qualifications, but I trained to be a chef, and then I didn't like it, and I trained to be a lecturer, and then I became redundant, and I couldn't find work for 3 years, and I have a family. I just didn't. Interviews never worked for me. 20 years I've done interviews, and I haven't secured work in 20 years with an interview, basically. So I had an idea. It's just getting to. I think putting myself out there. I suffer mental health issues and ADHD and social anxiety. So I think the biggest challenge is to push myself out in society more. You know, I don't. You know, I choose when I go to shopping. It's when it's quiet. I do a lot of things to make it easy for me. So pushing my barrier, pushing that was the hardest thing to achieve. But yeah, that was really hard to really push myself to find the right connections and contacts, and that's not a natural thing for me. It really put me out of my comfort zone. Also because I suppose because I felt I didn't have an education, I didn't have any qualification or anything. I felt maybe a bit of imposter syndrome. You know, why has this person got this idea? But actually, yeah, that came up too. So that was a big barrier for me. Yes.
Thank you, Michael. And Beverley, how about you? What did you experience as a big challenge or challenges?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that stood out. I mean, for me, it's in listening to other people talking. One of the things was getting people to understand why I wanted to do this kind of work, you know, mixing mindfulness with, and specifically working with marginalized groups. And they wanted to know why it was an issue. And so that's why I come ready-made with the evidence that, you know, if people feel stigma, then there will be, at the very lowest common denominator, a decline in their mental health. So it was the kind of stigma in itself in trying to explain that to people, and why I was a sole trader and then not a not-for-profit or a charity. I mean, I'm moving towards becoming a CIC probably, but I needed the time to kind of explore what I was doing, because it, like Michael is saying, it was a big change for me. I went through all my life very structured employment, always very traditional, working in research and then lecturing, etc. And then to change this and work on my own, I had to really push myself to do that, and to go out and talk to people, to explain. So that's why probably I have relied on the evidence, because it is still bringing in a bit of research, but at the same time it was necessary. And then the other thing is, whilst I'm working in this arena of visual impairment, blindness, and talking to people about it, and looking at this disproportionality with BAME communities. I don't like the term BAME anyway, but it's just as a descriptor. You know, in looking at the fact that there's communities out there in London, I work in London, who face a lot of stigma because of their sight loss. So that's a big challenge for me in getting people to come to me and to talk about all these issues, which is why I'm working with this group called BAME Vision, who are highlighting this disproportionality of sight loss in Black, Caribbean, African, Asian, white populations as well, because BAME is ethnically diverse populations, and why there is this. And particularly in Asian communities, it's the alternative format. It's people not having things in the right format, the accessibility issue. So that's really hard to nut to crack, get into the groups, and stigma that exists in communities like Jean-Marie was saying, the stigma, who had deteriorating sight, young Asian woman, and she had to pretend she was going to meet a friend to go and get her rehab, to go to learn to use a white cane. She had to pretend she was leaving the house to meet a friend, because it was a big stigma in her family to be blind. Her life was basically seen as over. So there's these kind of issues that we're battling with as well. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't notice.
No, just saying thank you. Thank you for
Thank you. And Jean-Marie, you've already mentioned, of course, the major, huge challenge of misunderstandings, misperceptions around mental health and psychological disabilities in Congo. What sort of other challenges did you meet while, for instance, trying to implement this school project you've mentioned? Jean-Marie?
I think he's frozen.
Ah, okay. Then while he's unfreezing, Vic, then let's turn over to you. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges you faced in your work around social innovation and activism?
I think, as you mentioned before, the key thing is attitudes towards disability. And we've experienced that not only like at ground level, throughout the grassroots level and in all cultures across South Africa. There's either often a blame thing to disability, there's lack of awareness. In some cultures, if you're disabled, as Jean-Marie was alluding to, you can be seen as being possessed or demonic. I think also across, we found stigma across all different cultures in South Africa, and I would imagine it's overseas as well. But also a lot of attention gets paid to people with physical disabilities often first. And those with psychosocial disabilities and intellectual learner disabilities get left behind. So I know within the disability movement, it's something that we've had to address. And then moving on to an academic and business level, the academy as well, at university level, it's so hard to get people on board and although we have policy that says disability should be included, trying to get it into the lecture room and trying to get people like myself lecturing on disability and having a presence there is so difficult. And it's about changing attitudes at all levels. And then interestingly, it'd be interesting to hear from Beverley and Michael in particular about, in terms of running a social enterprise, it's really, the situation we have is so capitalist, particularly found in South Africa, that, trying to deal with like normal things like tax, and how do you declare a social enterprise? But you're doing good, but you're just the whole area of social enterprise is so unknown, and everything's either make money, get the best profit you can, or you're a charity, and there's no in between. So there's a lot of middle ground that we found that is really the government doesn't know how to do it, business doesn't know how to handle it. There still isn't a crossover between trying to find a business that is social enterprise and charity, or not charity, but meeting a social need. There's a lot of it, we can talk about later. So I'm aware that this is responsible. So I'd say challenges, definitely attitude, and that goes from grassroots level, in my experience, all the way to parliamentary and academic level, just understanding the lived experiences of people with disability. Accessibility is a huge problem, and I would imagine Jean-Marie will say the same way. If you're disabled, you can't get out into public. If you're in a wheelchair, you can't use transport. So it's difficult to be seen, to be visible, to start breaking down those attitudes. And then also that extends to kind of academics, things and business sector where they don't know how to incorporate disabilities, or even NGOs and social enterprises. So that's been it. Thanks.
Thank you, Vic. I think unfortunately Jean-Marie was still frozen, but hopefully
I'm back. I'm back.
I'm back. Awesome. Great, Jean-Marie. I'm not sure how much you've heard. I'm just going to repeat. So you've already mentioned the severe and huge challenges of doing the work you do in the DRC due to the stigma linked to psychological disabilities and mental health disabilities. Sort of, what are additional challenges that you faced when you, for instance, were trying to, when you and still are implementing this mental health youth program in schools?
Thank you. One of the challenge that I did face and I'm still facing is more cultural. So in Congo, we are very collectivist society. So we have the power distance. So we use teachers, principals to implement the program. And then the kids or the people who have mental disabilities chose a project that they will work on, like to have like pork at home. I don't know how to say it in English. It's just like a farming stuff. So because of the power distance, the teachers and principal like, no, it's not good to give a child or someone who is 18 a good thing, and I'm still here. You have to start with me. So it was very tough to convince them. They're like, no, you need to start with us. And the main good thing or main reason our project is working well is because we included them, the parents at the beginning. So they felt that power and that authority. So they helped at home to implement what we did teach them about mental health. So that's the main challenge. Another one is technology. So in Congo, we have a lot of issue with internet, with electricity, and some partners may not understand it. Like it has been a week now that we asked some document or some survey to be scanned, but they were like, no, there is no electricity for 1 week. You need to give me $40 so that I can travel a long distance to go where there is electricity. So some partners don't understand it, and fortunately, Congo, they tend to forget us a lot because of the technology side. The other one I want to mention, Vic already mentioned it, the belief is very strong. Is the stigma, the myth is very strong, especially in rural area. People don't understand. They always, the Bantu culture always seek for who is responsible for any issue. So if someone has mental illness, they always look, you must be the responsible, or your neighbor or your aunt did push something bad at you, or some society, some pastors even push you to be banned. Like I experienced it in Bukavu a lot. There is another organization that we work with called the Ekabana. They pick kids who are banned by the mom because the pastor said, no, you are poor, you are having nightmares at night because, or you're not being married or getting a good husband because your daughter or your son is evil, is like a snake. And the good thing, the only way you can save yourself is to kill that child. So it happened a lot. The personal experience and challenge, like I will share, like Michael did, my personal experience being empath. My personal being empath is really like mental illness is tough, really, especially because it is on spectrum. When it is really high, it's very tough. The mood switch quickly, at least 1 or 2 times a day, and then you pick up emotions and you feel a lot of stuff. So being in Congo around people who are going through that pain, especially raped women, it was affecting me. Like really, the time they're talking to me in office, I remember a few times I will lie to a woman. I'll be like, "Oh, I feel sleepy. Give me a minute. I'll go grab a coffee." But in reality, I will go behind the other room and just cry a little bit because it was very tough. And I was like, really, do I need to keep doing this or not? Because it seems very tough for me. So I didn't know that the issue was with empathy. I was taking a lot of medication, depression, it didn't work. And then here in the US, when I came recently, got a psychologist who diagnosed me. I was like, no, I didn't know what was empathy or stuff. So it was really a challenge. But now I feel better because of what I learned from him. Is the key of happiness. We cannot control the society, but we can control ourselves. The more we expect our happiness to come from society, the more we will be deceived. We have to always remember every morning that we are good, especially unique. And our first work is to work on our happiness ourselves. The more we expect it from someone, the more we will be deceived a lot. And to love yourself the way you are, like morning say, no one else will ever replace me. I'm who I am because I'm especially it really gave me when I learned those kind of things a sense of power, sense of peace, to know that I will never change anymore. We will all die. But my only thing to do is to make sure I love other people and accept them even when I can't control them, and work on my side too to be happy.
Mm.
Thank you, Jean-Marie,
Yeah.
for those words. To take the slight opposite route, could each of you just have a think about one positive, unexpected thing that happened throughout your social innovation, your entrepreneurial journey? And yeah, this time I'm going to start with Vic. So what was something that was unexpected but positive that you experienced?
I think, on the spot, I'm trying to think of some major events. I'm sure there's been some, but I think for me, it's getting personal interactions. It's meeting, after I've lectured or after I've been involved with the project, is meeting someone with a disability who's come up to me in the shops or where I've been and said, Vic, thanks for sharing your story, and thanks for doing it. It's made such an impact, and thanks, and that's been it's been very rewarding, and very much like Jean-Marie was talking about disability and the problems you face, especially at grassroots level in the communities, can be completely overwhelming. And I know I've been Michael mentioned earlier, feeling like kind of imposter syndrome, and growing up in South Africa is quite interesting. As a white, I grew up at the apartheid era, and I lived quite a privileged background. I wasn't particularly wealthy, but we were middle class, and I had a very privileged background in the apartheid regime. And so, although I've been paralyzed for a long time and had difficulties there, I've still lived quite a privileged life in terms of my education and what I'm able to afford, etc., what I'm able to get done. So it's interesting about finding your place in that sometimes, and feeling whether you deserve it or not, to just keep going. And I think the thing is to persevere, but most of all, it's just been the human interactions that have helped me. I know, but one thing stands out. I got involved with, soon after my accident, I was still kind of a lost soul. I didn't want to live long in a wheelchair, but I got involved with day centers, child day centers in the townships, and just in many of them, I'm sure Jean-Marie will concur. It just was a place for survival, where kids could go and be safe during the day, where their mother could go to work or go and look for work or whatever they're doing, and just leave their child somewhere where they could be looked after. And the one girl in Tombakai came, and she was about 5-6 years old. Her legs couldn't move. She had spina bifida quite high up, so she had calipers that were long all the way length of her leg. And just for about 2 months, I persevered almost every day to the orthotic center that made her calipers to try to get these done and try to keep going. And just not giving up, but just following it up, and then we got her calipers sorted. And it was also 50-50 whether she was going to walk or not. It was up to her, really, because it wasn't easy. She was a small, little, skinny girl, and she had these crutches right up to her neck and her armpit, and she just persevered. She had to kind of move both legs together to get busy. And you know, but she started it. She tried to get over the sandy terrain in Newcastle, which is a township near South Africa, near Cape Town. So, and then I moved to different projects, and I didn't see her and then I saw her about 5 or 6 years later as a 12, 13-year-old in school, and she had a rucksack on. And I said I was so pleased to see her at a mainstream school with all her colleagues on the playground. And I just looked at her quickly, you know, which means, do you remember me? And she just looked and kind of nodded and smiled. But to have that kind of reward was really great. And that to me is one of my most rewarding moments beside my PhD and all the personal things that I've done. It's being part of that. I just see the difference you can make in people's lives. So I'm sure there's a lot of answer you looked for, but to me, that constant interaction, it reaffirms me. It's good for me also. It's almost a kind of a therapy when I get to talk, when I get to teach, because I'm using my disability as something positive and try to get that. Instead, I also find it quite easy, especially during lockdown. It's been isolating. It's been easy to get yourself down and to try and interact. When I'm not interacting, it's difficult. But when I do, it has an impact, and that's been for me. I think that. So it's keeping that humanity, keeping that human interaction alive, and see what really, really matters, the important level. And the rest comes. And also just persevering in all different things. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Vic. Jean-Marie, how about you? What was something unexpected but positive that you've experienced in all your work?
For this one, we are doing with Global Mind. We were very happy to see that because we invited the community leaders to receive journalists and to share our work to radio. It was very good. And we did take a chance to explain to community through radio that mental health is a reality, that they shouldn't discriminate someone with disability. So it was very good.
Thank you. Beverly, how about you?
Hi, can you hear me okay? So it's been
Yes.
breaking up a bit. Yeah, okay. So for me, there's been a few. I think in 2021, yes, I put on a course called Mindful Poetry for visually impaired people, and it was something I put together myself. And poetry and literature has been part of my academic career as well, but also just poetry is something I've always loved. And I just saw merging it with mindfulness was something that I'd always envisaged that I would do, because it's a kind of writing poetry is a very reflective experience. I wasn't sure if it would work, but I had the idea, so I put it together. And yeah, a lot of people subscribed. I was able to get funding for that as well, which was really great. And it was just that thing that Vic said about the lived experience, about people telling their stories, coming together, people coming out of their shell while they're in the group, and sharing their experiences of not being taken serious as a visually impaired writer. And we looked at just at the beginning of the group, we talked about accessibility and how people wrote. How did they write? What was their practice? And did they use a braille machine? Did they use their laptop? Did they dictate things? What was their experience of writing? And it was just that alone was something that people thought, well, I've never had that experience. I've always been excluded from classes from writing. One woman talked about the fact she wasn't taken serious as a writer, and that she wasn't permitted to join a writer's group because the tutor thought it was too much work to have someone with a disability in the class, and they had to do too much. So just them being there in the class with me for 8 weeks, doing mindfulness, and that was an eye-opener as well. The fact of how much mental health was present in the VI community was another thing. Even though I knew it myself, it was seeing it present and people talking about their experiences. So it was a great joy to me to teach that course, and hopefully I'll continue to teach it. So that's one thing I'll bring. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. And Michael, how about you?
In many ways, it's all similar. So I'm similar to Vic because I mean I've taught for over 30 years, and I know other social entrepreneurs who move away from the delivery or the hands-on stuff. Whereas for me, I think that grounds me. So teaching one day a week at a school, a special needs school, is just lovely. You know, it makes me, it's what I want to, you know, it makes me feel this is what is needed and what I need to do. But one thing stood out is I was teaching a young, so I work at a special needs school every week, and I've done that for the last 7-8 years with multiple disabilities and children from primary age through to sixth form, so a wide range of children. But one girl I had she didn't talk to me. She just watched me. She did what I asked her to do in a cookery workshop. So we teach. The way we teach is I teach real food, real meals. Even to 7-year-olds, we use knives. We use, you know, all the things you do to cook at a young age, and they can do it in a safe way. And she'd watch me every week and never talk to me, never said anything to me. But then on the last week of the course, the teachers gave me a note in a bag with a present, and in the bag was a chef's hat, and the note said, and from the parents saying, we love what you do for our daughter. She comes home and talks about what you do, and the food's fantastic. But the one thing she told us is that you are a chef, but you don't have a chef's hat. So in the bag was a chef's hat, which is amazing. I was just, and that makes it worthwhile. You know, those little things, it's not the big things, it's not big recognition or awards, it's just those little moments that I've touched someone's life through what I do. And that's important for me.
Thank you. It's a lovely story. And I do have a couple more questions, but I want to open it up to the audience, who I'm sure have lots of questions. So please do go ahead, raise your hand or type it in the chat, and then Amelia can read it out to us. Yes, hang on. There you go. Mariska.
Hi there, thank you. Thank you everyone so much. I'm wondering about your thoughts on Zoom. Zoom has just broadened the world for so many of us and has made it so much more inclusive and international. And while many of us miss that one-on-one connection, there's another opportunity that Zoom brings as well. And I'm wondering how organizations and even policy and education might start going towards making Zoom a standard, possibly. I'm just wondering your thoughts and on Zoom and how that might fit in or open up doors, or what your demands might be with it.
Either of you, just go ahead.
I can, from my perspective, from working with visually impaired people, and I started up during the pandemic, so it was vital for me to become, I had already known about Zoom and Teams, Microsoft Teams. So it was vital for me to in connecting with people.